Not everything about life in Italy is worth stressing over. And in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the key aspects of everyday life here in Italy and talking about whether or not you should be stressing over those aspects or whether perhaps you should be approaching them from a different perspective. I see far too many people getting hung up on the wrong kinds of things here in Italy. And quite frankly, I don't want to see that happen to you. So let's begin by talking about the first aspect of everyday life here in Italy that no doubt comes to mind when you think about moving here. It is, of course, bureaucracy. Now, I hate to break it to you. This is one aspect of everyday life that sits very firmly in the you need to stress over it category. Because even though bureaucracy here in Italy is incredibly archaic and complicated, varies dramatically from region to region, and is often dealt with by people who don't have a clue, it is fundamental to your life in this country and could even impact your ability to remain here, especially if you get it wrong. So yes, you do need to stress over this, and yes, you do need to do incredible amounts of research trying to understand and wrap your head around what it is that you need to do. Now, in terms of the research that you need to do, it really depends on your own personal circumstances. I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all answer when it comes to bureaucracy, because everybody has slightly different circumstances, which is going to result in slightly different forms of bureaucracy that they need to go through. What I will say to you, though, is try to use government sources as much as you can when you are doing your research, because they are reliable and they can be trusted. There are professional services that can help you with bureaucracy matters. And while some of those are very good indeed, there are others which, I can't really say this in a polite way, but will treat you like you are a cash cow, especially if you want to have the service in English. Unfortunately, foreigners are seen as walking banknotes. So you need to be sure that if you do enlist the services of a professional to double check your bureaucracy, you are not going into those kinds of meetings blind. You have an awareness of the bureaucracy that is needed, and you are simply going there to double check that you have got it all correct. Please don't rely on these people to do everything from the beginning. I really think it pays for you to have an awareness yourself of the bureaucracy, because it also helps with your independence in terms of living in this country, that you don't depend on other people to tell you what you have to do, but you also understand a little bit yourself what is required of you. But also it means that you are less likely to be ripped off if you already have some kind of an understanding as to what is required of you. Now, I'm not just talking about this from an abstract point of view. A few years ago, around the time of Brexit, I researched a professional service that could help me to understand a bureaucratic matter in English. And oh my goodness, the quote was ridiculous. I knew straight away that I was being ripped off, and I just dealt with it myself. So this is what I'm talking about. Research your bureaucracy, use the government pages, you can translate them into English if necessary. Just make sure that you fully understand what is required of you. Also consider translation services as well, particularly when you are completing paperwork and documents. Everything is in Italian, so you must make sure you understand what you are putting pen and paper to here in Italy. Also, I will say that regardless of your circumstances, there are some key pieces of bureaucracy that apply to everyone, namely your codice fiscale, which is your tax code, and disclaimer, it's one of the easiest pieces of bureaucracy to obtain in Italy. I wonder why. Secondly, it is, of course, your Carta di Identità, which is your Italian identity card, a government-issued document which every Italian citizen and resident must have. And thirdly, your tessera sanitaria. This is your healthcare card. And regardless of whether or not you pay into the healthcare system here or you can access it for free, this document will be necessary for you to prove your identity, prove your ability to access certain health services, and also even if you smoke, for example, you can use it to purchase cigarettes out of hours when the tobacco shop is closed from the machine that is outside. I don't smoke personally, but I just know that this is how it works here. So it's an important document that you must have, and which every Italian citizen has. And often it is also required as a form of identity in certain situations as well. So do your research with bureaucracy. It isn't something that can be rushed, I'm afraid. It is something that you must make sure you understand, and it is something that you will continuously stress over for the entire time that you live here. I've got a couple of documents that need renewing the latter part of this year into the early part of next year, and it's June and I'm already starting to feel the pangs of stress. It's natural, it's normal, it's always potluck as to how efficient the service will be, depending on what you have to do. So just get used to it. It's going to be a normal part of your life here, but you do need to spend time on this. Definitely don't underestimate just how important bureaucracy is. The second aspect is the culture and way of life. Now, I'm going to put this in the you don't need to stress over this category, because I think you just need to embrace the new way of life that you're going to lead, and also adapt your life and change accordingly so that you can have a much better experience. A lot of people move here to Italy, and whether or not they realise it, they are trying to recreate the life that they've always known just here in Italy, with better weather and usually better food. There is a problem with that though, because you are kind of trying to integrate into a culture that could be wildly different to your own. And there are different cultural nuances that you may come into resistance with because you are not used to the way that certain things are done here. For example, here in the south of Italy, shops and businesses will close for like 2 to 3 hours every single afternoon. Now, this might be something that you are definitely not used to. In the UK, this doesn't happen, for example. So that's a way of life that you are going to have to adjust to. So you do need to change in some way the way that you live your life, your structure, your routine, and the things that you do. So it's an important aspect to consider, but it's not one that I think you need to stress over. It's one that you need to embrace. And I think that people struggle with this and they stress over it unnecessarily, because usually they don't want to change, or they want to retain an aspect of their life that they've always held on to. Relax a little bit with this. Learn as much as you can from the culture. You've moved here to Italy for a reason, but also to learn, grow and develop. It's a natural byproduct of such an experience. And I've always said it on this channel, but moving to Italy has been one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in terms of growth, personal development, and learning so much and continuing to learn. Even now, 7 years in, I literally don't think you ever stop if you are open to the process. Don't be afraid of change. So many people are like, you don't need to change when you move to Italy. You can stay the same. But really, if you are embracing the experience wholeheartedly and you are throwing yourself in head first, there will be aspects of your life that change. It's inevitable. So don't be afraid of that. Embrace it. Embrace this whole process of integrating into a new culture. You don't have to lose who you are fundamentally as a person. That's important. But you can embrace the process more and not necessarily stress over it. The third aspect is weather. Now, I think this sits in the middle really, because it does depend on where in Italy you move to as to whether or not you should be stressing over the weather or approaching it from a different perspective. If you live here in the south of Italy like I do think there are times when you can stress over the weather. The summers here are ridiculously hot. And this goes for all of Italy, but especially here in the south of Italy. Previous summers have reached 40-degree temperatures. And trust me, when you're working and you are trying to lead a normal everyday life in that heat, it is super difficult. You wave goodbye to your energy for the whole of summer. So I think if you are somebody who doesn't like extreme temperatures, doesn't really cope very well in the heat, this could be something that you stress over, which is why it stems back to doing your research properly at the very, very beginning, making sure that you understand the climate and the weather of the part of Italy that you're interested in, because really it does vary. The north of Italy, in my opinion, sees more similar climates to that of the UK. There does feel like there is a season of autumn in North Italy. They have fog and hail and the kinds of weather that we would experience in the UK. Here in South Italy, hardly ever snows, if at all. It's like a rare moment in a blink of an eye if it snows. I think in the 7 years I've lived here, it snowed once and it was in the blink of an eye. The very next morning it was gone. Also, doesn't really get very foggy, depends where you are, depends how high up you are, of course. There are always kind of other factors. And also, it hails only if there's an extreme storm. So, the weather is so different in all of Italy, but one thing is for sure, it does get very hot in this country. So you must do your research first and foremost and understand where you need to position yourself. in order for you not to be stressing over this particular aspect. Now, if you've done your research properly and you understand where in Italy is best for you for the weather, then this is something that you can just embrace. Like maybe you appreciate the contrast, because if you come from a country like I did, where you have permanent grey skies and rain, when you have a bit of sunshine, it feels like it's a novelty. So, it's something that you gradually get used to and really genuinely appreciate as a result. So this is something that you sit kind of firmly in the middle with, depending on what your circumstances are, depending on where in Italy you move to. But it is something that you must research, because the weather here can be extreme. There are often floods in the north of Italy. Here in the south of Italy, we can have problems with drought. Sicily had a drought last summer. There can be problems also with, depending on the city, of course, but when there is extreme rain, often that creates like mini floods in the cities because the drains are all backed up and haven't been cleaned. Welcome to the south of Italy. And so you can imagine that this causes problems as well. So it really, really does depend. But I think somewhere in the middle, pay attention to the weather here. Do your research from the very beginning. Obviously, remember, we are going through like global warming and everything else. Weather here can be extreme compared to the past. But also, I think if you've done your research properly, you'll be veering more towards the other end where it's not really something that you're going to stress over. Okay, let's talk about people. Now, this is a category which I'm going to say you shouldn't stress over this. However, it doesn't come easily for many people, especially if they really care what others think of them, or they want to try and integrate and fit into life here. Now, the reason I say to you it really doesn't matter and you shouldn't stress over this is because essentially the thing you must remember is this: people are going to have an opinion about you, whatever you do. You could come here and throw yourself headfirst into this culture, speak the language from day one, do everything the Italian way, and really try and live as authentically as you can. And there will still be somebody who looks at you and thinks that you are strange. Like, you just cannot control other people. And so this is why you shouldn't really spend time stressing over this aspect. There are going to be differences. You are going to find it more challenging maybe to make connections. Absolutely. I've been very honest with you on this channel that it's not easy to make friends here, primarily, as I've always said, because Italians have close-knit friendship circles that go back to when they were at school. But also because when you come from a different culture, people have to build that trust with you. You don't have shared experiences. You don't have a history in this country. People don't know who you are from Adam. And so for this, people can be quite wary at the beginning. It takes time before you're sitting at their kitchen table, eating dinner with their friends and family. So you've just got to approach this process with patience. But just know it really, really doesn't matter what other people think about you. The thing that is most important is that you are authentic and you are showing up with every single step that you take. This is one of the most important aspects of life here. Don't allow your fear of what other people think of you to hold you back from integrating and building connections in this country. It's the biggest piece of advice that I could share with you. But essentially, don't worry about what people think of you. Like, you are doing something that for many people is just a dream in their minds. They do not have the courage to see it through, but you do. And so hold on to that when you are dealing with people here who may not be as friendly as you had first thought that they would be, or are a little bit distant with you at the beginning. Everything here in Italy takes time. Don't stress over this aspect. Again, it's an aspect to embrace and to try to learn from and grow as a person. The next aspect is mindset. Now, this does fit very firmly in that you need to stress over this category because mindset has the capability to make or break your experience here in Italy. It is something that people don't really talk about a lot. When you go to research about life in Italy, you don't really see many people saying you've got to work on this before you even start thinking about the practical aspects. People are just all about, this is how you get a visa, this is how you find an apartment, this is how you get a job. Like, people are all about the practical steps. But what happens when you strip those practical aspects away and you are just left with you, yourself, and you? Me, myself, and I want to say you, yourself, and you. It works, but it's just not what I wanted to say. What happens in that case? Well, you're stuck. And often that is the time when people really start struggling here in Italy, because I do think that you ride the wave for a certain amount of time. You feel good, you're enjoying the experience, you're getting everything organized. And then at some point, the wave crashes down and you're like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? This happens to everybody, I think, and it will happen to people at different times on their journey, depending on what they're doing here in Italy. So you must work on your mindset. You must be confident in your decision and reason to move to Italy, in your ability to integrate into a new life here. And you must also kind of feel good within yourself about the changes that you're going to go through, and also about being a beginner again and learning to restart your life from scratch, because it's a huge upheaval that you will go through. Now, because I know that this is something that is definitely worth stressing over, I have created my very first course, Become Italy Ready from the Inside Out. I'm going to link it up here and also below in the show notes, but go check that course out, because I promise you, the time is worth investing into your mindset. It will be the one thing that will hold you up and help you to weather the many storms that you might experience here in Italy, because it's not an easy country to live in. I've spoken about this a lot, and everything starts and ends up here. So really do spend time working on your mindset. Don't dismiss it as something woo-woo, because I promise you, when life starts to get difficult here in this country, it is this that will help you to see your experience through. Okay, let's talk about work. Now, this might be an aspect that doesn't apply to you. It really depends on whether or not you are going to be working in this country, of course, but I'm going to put this somewhere in the middle again, because I think it is something worth stressing over on the one hand, in terms of making sure that you are working in a correct way, that you have the correct pay and a correct contract and the correct conditions. I keep saying correct because I live in the south of Italy and it's a word that is often omitted. Also, I will say, it sits somewhere on the other side as well, that you shouldn't stress too much over this aspect. You've got to embrace the new way of living, because working conditions, pay, culture, mindset, the list goes on, very different here compared to other countries. And you have to prepare yourself for this, and you have to go with the flow a lot when it comes to the way of working in this country. There are many benefits to the way of working here, but there are also many more difficult aspects that you might have to spend some time adjusting to. So it's something very, very important that you must think about. And I really think sometimes that the way of working here trips a lot of people up, because they come here with unrealistically high expectations about salary and career prospects. And then they realize that actually they're in a part of Italy where they're never going to progress and their salary is going to remain rock bottom forever. Like, it's this. You've got to be realistic about life here and set your expectations straight, to be quite frank. But essentially, I think this sits somewhere in the middle. It really depends on your ability to embrace the situation, but also you've got to be sure that everything is legit with your work here, because some employers take liberties, to put it bluntly. So you must make sure that you know your rights and you know what you're entitled to, and everything is kosher. But on the other hand, don't stress too much about it, because it's just another way of life here that you must adapt to. Overall, though, I will say that there are not many aspects of life here in Italy that are worth stressing over. You have to learn to adapt, absolutely, and perhaps those aspects will become stressful if you're not able to do so. But apart from like the key things that I've really spoken about here, I pretty much think that a lot of life here is to go with the flow, learning to change your routine and to embrace the new life that you are creating for yourself. It's a really special thing. And, you know, I think a lot of people face resistance because they are not willing to go through the steps that are needed to learn to live in another culture and the kind of nuances that come with that. But you are in the right place, because on this channel, for example, I talk about life in Italy without the fantasy. So you can educate yourself on the reality of life here and not come here with a misguided romantic sense of what life is and then later on really struggle. So do your research, but don't stress over every aspect of life here. Learn to embrace the process, and I promise you, you'll really benefit from all of the lessons that this country can bring. And if you've enjoyed this video, this is the one I want you to watch next. I will see you in the next video.